Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Aircraftsman Luke Samuels. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Stuart McIntyre Pyers. Stuart Pyers was born in 1890, the youngest son of George and Mary Pyers of Mildura, Victoria. Little is known of Stuart's early life, other than that his father worked an irrigation settlement and Stuart was educated at the local state school in Mildura. He went on to work as a blacksmith. Stuart Pyers enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force with his brother Jack and mate Alf Allen in September 1915. The three went into Royal Park Camp to begin their training, finding a large number of young men from Mildura there with them. One of them, Alf Thomas, wrote that wherever he turned, he meets a Mildura acquaintance. After completing their training, Private Stuart Pyers and his mates left Australia for active service overseas on the 5th of January 1916 with reinforcements to the 24th Battalion. The Pyers brothers and Alf Thomas were first sent to Egypt, where the bulk of the AIF had recently returned from Gallipoli. During this time, the AIF was undergoing a period of expansion and reorganisation, and as part of this process, the three were transferred to the 8th Battalion. After further training in the Egyptian desert, they were sent to France with their new battalion in March 1916. The 8th Battalion was sent to a quiet sector of the Western Front in order to gain valuable experience of trench warfare conditions. Stuart wrote home that the weather is cold and was wet underfoot, but there is plenty of work to do. He was particularly proud that he managed to hit a German shovel being waved in the trenches opposite using a periscope rifle. At one point, in his early time in the trenches, Stuart Pyers went forward to relieve Jack and Alf in a position in the forward lines. 15 minutes later, he was shot at by a German sniper at close range. Before the sniper could reload, the unwounded Stuart Pyers had taken him prisoner. In Australia, the local newspaper would make the somewhat dubious claim that Pyers had been the first Australian soldier to take a German prisoner in France. The article concluded, the prisoner was marched away to headquarters where some valuable information was obtained. In July 1916, the 8th Battalion was sent south to take part in the British campaign on the Somme that had been raging since the first of the month. On the 23rd of July, Australians of the 1st Australian Division attacked and captured the French village of Pozières, an objective from the beginning of the campaign which had remained out of reach. The 8th Battalion, which had been in reserve, was called into the front line to help defend the newly captured ground. By this time, Stuart Pyers' mate Alf Allen was Lance Corporal of his section. Allen wrote home to describe the battle, recalling how they advanced under hellish machine gun fire, armed with 2 bombs apiece, as well as a rifle and bayonet. After they had captured their position, Allen's party, including the Pyers brothers, held on for 3 days and nights under hellish shell fire until they were relieved by men of the 2nd Australian Division. They had suffered heavy casualties. One of those who did not return was Private Stuart Pyers. Alf Allen thought he had been killed when the Germans counterattacked their position at some point. Another article reported that Stuart had been sniped when leaving the trenches after an action. Whatever the cause of death, Stuart Pyers' body was lost in the unceasing artillery fire that characterised the fighting at Pozières. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux with more than 10,000 other Australians who died on the Somme with no known grave. He was 24 years old. Jack Pyers was invalided home to Australia in 1917 and Alf Allen returned in 1919 with the rank of sergeant. The Pyers family received many letters, cards and visits from friends and family expressing sympathy at their loss. After receiving news of their son's death, they published a notice in the local paper in memory of Stuart. It reads in part, "Far away from all who loved him, soldiers gently laid him to rest. In a faraway grave he is sleeping, one of God's bravest and best. The midnight stars are shining on a grave we cannot see, where sleeping without dreaming lies the boy so dear to us." Stuart Pyers' name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name, listed on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux, is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifices told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Stuart McIntyre Pyers, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, or the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.